Welcome to the Lucky 13 podcast, where we talk about all things people in profit and business. I am one of your co-hosts, Mike Lantz.
And I'm the guy without the sexy voice, Josh Hauser, which I'm really getting over this. This voice thing it's driving me nuts, Mike.
Well, you know, when you got it, you got it.
Do you eat Halls every day? What do you do?
No, not at all. Not at all. So you've been, with number 4, you're in college decision mode, aren't you?
We are. We're almost
How's that
halfway
going?
through the college decision. This was the hardest one. And it was the hardest one and the clearest one all at the same time, Mike. It's one of those that you look at what's going on in the landscape of the world, and you look at how social media drives, and we want clicks and we want attention and we want to have all this fame, if you will. And somehow our 4th daughter, who had multiple Division I offers, one of those being Navy, which, oh my gosh, would have done my heart amazing, and some local schools here. You know what? At the end of the day, she prayed on it. She looked at her values and her faith, and she's been driven to grace. And because of that, she's going to grace.
That is
so
awesome.
how about that those two words align?
Yeah.
And it was one of those, it's a proud shoulders back. Oh my gosh, we might have one that gets it. Not that the other 3 don't, but we have one that gets it. And we might make some mistakes in the world, but every once in a while, it's good to see your kids make up for it for you.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, college decisions, especially when you're an athlete, they're so important, aren't they? I mean, we see all the time where people are going to a school for all the wrong reasons, and then they're transferring out a couple years later and all of that. It's so important.
Yeah, I think if her athleticism didn't exist, I think this would have been the choice too, which is a good match.
Yeah, for sure.
By the way, I appreciate the stalking. I think that's a little weird, but I'm good with it because you stalk. We did not have this conversation.
Nope.
And so, just in all fairness, I've been stalking you a little bit, and I saw a Utah trip in there. Bring it to me. Tell me what's going on.
Oh, wow. So, it was a great trip. So, we fly. So, this kind of relates back to a decision that my wife and I had to make back in 2017. So, we have 5 kids, as you know. We're the 5 of the 13, and you're the other 8. And we just had a daughter that was just really struggling in life, and you know, and she needed help, and it was help that was way beyond what we could give her. And so her therapist that she had been seeing for a while just recommended this place out in a little town, population 800, Escalante, Utah. So here's how you get there. You fly into Vegas.
Okay.
You go to you go rent your car. You go out to I-15.
Okay.
And you drive 3 hours north.
I'm with you.
Okay. And then you go 2.5 hours into the mountains. Most beautiful drive you've ever seen. And then you stumble across this town with no stoplight. They don't deliver the mail to your house. It goes to the post office.
I'm seeing this.
But absolutely gorgeous. And it's this town called Escalante, Utah.
Okay.
And what Escalante is known for is this place called Turnabout Ranch. And they specialize in having teenagers who are struggling in life come there, and they take all your electronics. They take, everyone wears the same clothes, which they're nothing fancy. It's cowboy boots and jeans and, T-shirts and jackets and things like that. And it's a live working ranch, a active working cattle ranch.
Got it.
And so we made the decision we went on July 26, 2017. It was a heartbreaking decision for us because we didn't want to be that far away from our 15-year-old daughter. But she wanted to go. She knew that she needed some guidance and some help. And so we took her out there on July 26, 2017, and we literally had to sign papers that said our guardian rights are now in the hands of Turnabout Ranch for the period of time that she's there. That was a weird thing to do.
That pen's got to be hard to pick up. That's heavy.
So she spent 4 months there on 2 different occasions when she was 15 and 16. And she came back and, she graduated high school and she's been thriving and all those types of things. Well, about 2 months ago, she noticed on Facebook a job ad to be the horse wrangler or the horsemanship manager there full time. And she jumped at the chance. And so here was somebody who was a student on 2 different occasions who's now back there impacting the lives of those kids. And she called just 2 days ago. She spent the entire day on the back of a horse driving cattle out of the mountains down to the desert for the winter.
Come on.
And then they have to check all of those cattle, the female cattle.
Sure.
To see if they're pregnant.
Yep.
And unfortunately, they don't have great ultrasound equipment. So they put the glove on and,
like the 50th doctor appointment.
Yeah, exactly. So, but she's thriving. She's doing a really great job. And so we took her out there a couple of weeks ago, and she loves it. And it's just absolutely gorgeous out there.
I mean, come on. Think about this. The awareness to know that help is needed. Kudos to you, right? And your missus, your better half. Second, the willingness of your daughter to go do that. And then third, the fact that it was beyond just that decision, that it was actually a calling that was going to come back full circle.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you got to put those decisions in Faith's hands.
Yeah, who knew? And I will tell you, I mean, I did this a little bit kicking and screaming. My wife was really the driver of this, but, my wife was, the main caregiver of our kids. But it was, and I think it'd be a really great topic today because business owners all over the world today are having to make really tough decisions. They should always be making tough decisions, but especially now. The economy's in a weird spot. The politics are in a weird spot. There's a couple of wars going on in the world. It's impacting us in so many different ways. And this isn't a political show at all.
No.
But business owners are having to make tough decisions. And that was a tough decision that Julie and I had to make. And so I thought we'd just talk a little bit about making tough decisions in the business world today.
Yeah, what you said there, Mike, is tough decisions don't. I'm going to lead with this if you don't mind. That what I heard you say is tough decisions don't have to be right, but you guys made that. You don't have to make the right decision, but you have to make that decision right. And just coming together and being aware of it and leaning into it. And it had to do with a person.
Yeah.
And ideally, we talk about people and profit. And the toughest decision we make as business owners are with our people.
Yeah, and I heard a phrase today that I thought was really good, and it was at a conference I was at, and they really talked about sometimes that the leader of the Navy, or all the time the leader of the Navy, has to make the best decision for the Navy, not necessarily for an individual soldier. And I thought that was a really great stat. When I've shared before, I used to be with a company called Defender Direct or Defenders.
Yep.
And I'd been there for about 7 months. And I remember the CEO coming to my office and he said, Mike, I think we have to lay some people off. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we're known for our culture. And
Correct.
and he said, if we don't do this, then it's going to inflict heartbreak on the entire organization, not the handful of people. We had to lay off about 7% of our people. And he goes, I'm worried about the 93 that will be left. And then the ones we can hire next year and then next year and the next year and the next year. And so I thought it might be good for us to just kind of talk about a framework possibly for us to consider whenever we're making business decisions.
I love it. One of the things I put on boards, whether it's in a client meeting or a EOS meeting or just with a different business owner of sorts, I literally write across the top of the board, before we start today, I want you to agree with me. We're going to act in the greater good of the company.
Yeah.
And sometimes those decisions feel like they can hurt someone or something. We have to ask ourselves, is that in the greater good of the company, i.e. your Navy reference?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so when you've got a tough decision that's sitting out on the table that you've got to make, whether it's, and this podcast is personal and professional, right?
I like it.
Because I think a decision-making mindset or decision-making framework is a decision-making framework,
correct,
no matter what context you're in. What do you think about first?
Oh, well, I'm not going to be shocked. Faith and family have to come into play. And I know that, and I say that with this underlying current of I have to be right with me on that as well.
Yeah.
And so as much as I say for the greater good of the company, in personal decisions, I have to think about the greater good of me as well, because a broken me is not going to be good for anybody.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds selfish, but it's actually one of the least selfish things that I can do. And I know I've hidden from that in the past, that I did this for you. And then I make this resentment side. So I've really honed in on, I got to be good with it. And then my faith and my family have to be aligned with it. I don't know if that helps or resonates.
Yeah, I do think the bifurcate, like putting that, it's got to be good for you, right? And I know that can kind of sometimes come across, well, that's a selfish mindset.
Yeah.
But if you're rooted in what your core values are and those work for you, then it's got to be good for you. Then faith and family.
Yeah.
And if it's in the business world, it's got to be then your coworkers, right?
Correct.
In the business.
Absolutely. Those, you know what? We got lots of processes and we got lots of products, but boy, we got this is the reason why we call this people in profit, because the human capital side of life is beyond just a dollar figure. It's an emotional side. It's a bigger picture. It's impact. And we have to keep that in consideration.
Yeah. Yeah. So after that, after it aligns with where your heart is and your values, and then you faith and family, what's next?
You know what? I think there's a seek counseling. Because as much as we have these inner thoughts and we get centered, what's wrong with seeking counseling from those? If you surrounded yourself, your dartboard of life, with the right people, there are some people in there that that I call them the sage, the wisdom, got hair color like mine sometimes, that you can lean on. But I want to preface this for a second. You got to go to them with the right message. And what I mean by that, I've had mistakes where they've come to me and I start thinking about the answer as you're telling me the problem. right? And so what I'm not doing is actually listening clearly, and I've already tried to solve your problem without actually being curious and going there. And vice versa, sometimes I just want that sounding board. I just need to say it out loud, and can you be willing to do it? So when I say seek, I want to make sure that you clearly understand that, Mike, what I need you to do today is just be my sounding board. Let me speak for a second. I need to get this out of my face. And then when we're done, let's see what comes out of it. Or, Mike, I'm going to say a couple things, and then I'm going to shut up, and I need you to pour into me. And just being clear on that as decision-making, because I'm not necessarily trying to hone the decision on you. I'm seeking for you to come alongside with me because I know you know my heart, my soul. And if I clearly explain what my greater good is, I think you'll help me get there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it absolutely does. And one of the things I think that is so important too, we've heard that phrase, like we become just like the 5 or 6 people that we hang around with most. And I think what's so important when you're seeking counsel is that you're seeking counsel with people that are yoked similarly to you in whatever it is. So like, I'm not going to go seek counsel from somebody who's filed bankruptcy 3 times and is broke about a financial issue.
No.
I'm not going to go seek counsel about my relationship with my spouse to somebody who's been divorced 3 times.
Correct.
I'm going to go to somebody that I look up to as somebody that says, that's the kind of relationship I want to have, or that's the financial future I want to have. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of people sometimes fall into, is they ask opinions or advice or counsel from the wrong people.
Oh, I mean, and if you're not clear on that, you need to take that time and start asking yourself, on my toughest days, who would I surround myself with? They'll know you. And then who you're going to seek from, then I can leverage who I'm going to seek from based off what I know about them as well. Man, they're a good listener, or they got that information. They can speak my truth better than I can, and they'll help me see it. Does that resonate?
Yeah, and I would throw out as just a kind of a point, if somebody doesn't have these in their lives, a personal board of advisors in all of the different aspects of their life, or their business board of advisors that they can go to. Like, if marketing is a big key thing in your organization, go find somebody that's willing to take your phone call and give you some marketing advice without charging you. And so because the time to go look for the people isn't when you've got the problem that's hot right now.
Absolutely.
Because you'll choose the wrong person. 100%.
Never make a decision in the valley. And so you're going to make that decision in the valley. I had somebody share this with me once. I'm going to have 8 people carry my casket, 4 people who know my secrets and 4 people who know my soul. I need the 4 people who know my secrets because I need them to bury me with me, but I need the 4 people who know my soul who can pray with me when I get there. And that was so resonate that my board of directors has a little variety in there. It gives me that little, hey, y'all watch this that I might have had in life that I need to make sure I'm putting down and elevating up. But it's also those 4 people, man, on that worst day, I know they know me, and they'll let me be me and tell me when I'm not.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you're going to make sure that any decision you make aligns with your personal core values. You're going to check it with your faith in your family. You're going to seek some advice to get help. What else?
I go back to what we started with, the hardest question, the Navy question. I have to now make a decision, which I love to call choice. And we can talk about that.
Yeah, we'll go into that.
To me, a decision is the burn the boat. I'm cutting everything off and going that direction. And back to what we said earlier, you don't have to make the right decision, but you have to make your decisions right. That can be tough. I want to make sure that if there are choices that I can adapt and adjust, no different than putting in how I'm going to get to Orlando and Siri. I want to be able to adjust if I need to, because Atlanta sucks at 5 o'clock. I want to be able to make adjustments accordingly, right? If I can build that into my framework, I will. But when I make that choice or that decision, it all has to be back to that Navy guy. Greater good. Am I, as much as I self-served on number 1 that I mentioned, now I have to look out for the entirement of who's going to be affected by this rock I'm getting ready to throw in the pond, because those ripples are going to touch people, and I need to make sure that I'm doing what's in the best interest. And sometimes those are the hardest ones to make, because the best interest could be next move.
Yeah, and so back to that example I gave when I was with Defenders. I mean, we had 1,000 people, and we needed to lay off about 7% of them. And for those 7%, it was bad.
I'm sure.
It stunk. It was
you
in
probably still feel it right now.
Yeah, I do, man. I never feel comfortable having to terminate people or lay them off, but that was what was in the greater good of the 93% that stayed. And had we not made that tough decision, then I'm not sure the organization would have grown into what it was. So,
and in some ways, and this sounds, I want to make sure this doesn't sound harsh or coarse. That 7% long term, their plan. It does work out, and you have to put that to rest with yourself, and also be willing to do anything and everything you can to help them. But the 93% could be affected by that 7% lack of decision. And that's the wrong decision. The only wrong decision is no decision, right? And so it's making a decision and then being able to pivot from that.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there another step now? Now you're thinking about it as kind of going.
Now you're getting into my soul. Holy smokes. Well, I mean, that's why I think that adapt. You got to weigh and measure that decision.
Yeah.
That's where you make it right. Okay, now I'm in motion. An object of motion stays in motion. Okay, now we're in motion.
Yeah.
Do I have the skill sets and the right people around me? And again, that intestinal fortitude to pivot a little bit, to move that a little bit. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Because if you just make a decision and just head down and go, that sounds good until you look up and you're running into the Rock of Gibraltar. That makes no sense to me. We got to be able to pivot with that, which also means you got to allow those people around you to help you see that while you're doing that. Is that?
Yeah, it's perfect. I'd like to add a couple too.
Oh, come on.
So one is, I think, and maybe this is spoken, I'm 53, you're similar, maybe.
Yeah, 51.
Yeah. And
I
so
look like 53.
as we go through every year, we get more and more experiences under our belt.
Correct.
And I this would not be the greatest advice for like a 21-year-old as much as it would be for a 53-year-old. But I think you got to take whatever decision you're going to go make and then apply and then look back at your decision patterns of the past and go, am I making a decision? Is this pattern of decision something that's burned me in the past? So you're basically looking back on on the history of your life and saying, does this still feel like the right decision? Because we're making these decisions over time, and we have to, that's why we study history, right?
It is.
So we don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah. What you just said is, I probably should articulate this way. My decision is based off, or our decision would be based off who we want to be in the future. Now let's go look at the lessons from our past to make sure that we're going to get ourselves to our future self, who already exists.
Yeah.
Let's just shorten that runway.
Yeah.
Let's get there as fast as we can with as little bumps and as little friction as we can.
Yeah.
And that's where those lessons from the past, we have to leverage that. Because without that, we're doomed to repeat them. And then we're in the circle cycle of past, present, past, present, past, present, when I want to get to past, present, future. And let the future drive my thoughts.
Yeah. The last one that I'll add that I've been in so many rooms with people, and I'm sure you probably have as an EOS implementer and prior to doing that as well. It's easy to make a decision in the safety of the bunker. But then when you come out of the bunker and the shells are hitting and the guns are blaring and all this kind of stuff, so you have to kind of think, okay, now that we've said what we're going to go do, let's imagine all of the crap that can hit the fan when we get out of the bunker. And is this still the right decision?
Yeah. The term I use is, there's no amount of outer armor that's going to prepare you for this. Is your Under Armour ready? And your Under Armour is the soul of the decision. Did you really make it from a point of love, or did you make it from fear? If you make it from fear, you better put on all the outer armor you need. But if your Under Armour was clean, when you used your values, you used those people around you, tapped into that sage wisdom, you know what? Those shells are going to come whether you have outer armor or Under Armour. I'm going to rely on my soul to get me through that, not on some protective, I hope this works, because hope's not a tactic for me.
For sure. For sure. Well, excellent. I think the takeaway for anybody listening to this is I think we do have a couple dozen listeners, right? So hopefully that grows.
Yes.
I mean, we're only at episode 5 now.
We're going to buy a couple donuts and feed them all.
Yeah,
it's going to be great.
Sure. And so I think the takeaway is no matter what your decision process is, have one.
Yes. Got to have one.
Got to have one. And so take a minute, sit down and look at your past and say, how have I made decisions in the past? And is that still a really good, if I think about it without a decision to make today, in a very neutral way, does that still seem like the really best way to make a decision? And codify that and follow that.
Yeah.
And that gets you away from that reactionary type of situation and those reactionary decisions for sure.
Yeah, if you have a problem, build a process. If you have problems making decisions, build a process that allows you a path to get there.
Yeah.
That's what you just said to me clearly.
And build that personal and that business board of directors that can help you in all the different aspects. I think those are the two takeaways.
Yeah, yeah. Know yourself and protect yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what those two things will do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Well, we thank everybody for listening to the Lucky 13 podcast. We drop a new episode at 1300 hours every Monday.
I love it.
Our podcast will typically be between 18 and 25 minutes long. So it's when you're driving to a client site or whatever you're doing or back home, flip us on, follow us. We're also on LinkedIn, both
Absolutely.
Lucky 13 Podcast, Josh Hauser, Mike Lantz, and then we have a website also, Lucky 13 Podcast. So lots of ways to connect with us. One of the things we'd love to hear from our listeners is what are the topics you want us to discuss? And we by no means are experts at a lot of things, but we'll go out. My organizations work with 140 different businesses every single month. I know Invest has thousands of clients.
Correct.
We'll go out and we'll interview and get information from the best of the best.
Yeah, we'll do one of two things. We'll either steal the information from somebody else, or we'll tell you what we did and why it didn't work, so you don't do that.
Yeah, or you never know. We're going to start having some guests too, so we'll bring them in.
I like it. They're going to have to be tall.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you again for listening, Josh. Always a pleasure.
Mike, what a pleasure.